Welcome to the Hotel Buy, brought to you by Beechwood Real Estate Advisors.
Explore the world of Canadian hotel investment with us. Learn about success strategies, discover how to overcome challenges, and hear from industry experts.
Whether you're a seasoned investor or a curious listener, the Hotel Buy is your ultimate guide to the latest trends, strategies, and stories shaping the landscape of hotel investments.
Now let's start the conversation.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Hotel Buy. We have another exciting podcast today, and I'm thrilled to introduce Sarah Sklash and April Brown, founders and co-owners of the June Motel. They were friends first and came together to become investment partners as they embarked on an exciting journey into motel ownership. Sarah is focused on the operations and guest experience side of the business and has a professional background that includes public service and government relations. April has a background in public relations and spent her early career at a PR agency, giving her a great foundation to build the June Motel brand and social media presence, which has been a huge driver of the business. You may also recognize them from the Netflix series Motel Makeover, which follows the renovation of the June Motel in Sauble Beach. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend. It was great to see the ins and outs of reinventing a dated motel into a highly successful design-focused boutique property. Welcome, ladies.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Hello. So glad to have you on. Really appreciate you joining me today. And it's a personal story. I love your rise and watching you as you grow. So thanks again for joining me today. I'd like to just jump right in. April, if you don't mind kicking us off, I'd like to start with this just right from the beginning, the story of how you came to buy the first property in Prince Edward County back in 2016.
Yeah, so it was, I think, like New Year's Day 2016. Sarah and I had been friends for so many years and, had tossed around this idea of starting a business together. But, I don't think either of us were at that place in our lives. But at the beginning of 2016, we were both really ready for a really big life and a big career change. And so we got together, we opened a bottle of wine, we brainstormed probably like 40 or 50 different business ideas. A lot of them really centered around Prince Edward County because we had been going out there with our group of girlfriends, and we realized that there was such an opportunity there, but we just couldn't really figure out what that was yet. One of the ideas that we loved was this idea of an adult wine camp. And we were just sort of looking for a venue to host it. And Sarah loves scouring the real estate app. And she, already knew that this motel outside of Picton was for sale. And so we started tossing around the idea of like renting this place out for the weekend. It quickly escalated from let's rent this place out for the weekend to we should buy that motel. And I think it was like a week later that we are driving out in a snowstorm to look at this property. And we had stayed at like boutique motels before in places like California or Miami, and really understood that like this was certainly a trend that people were flipping these motels into more boutique style properties. And so we already had a pretty clear vision of what this place could be when we saw it. And, to this day, we joke like the floors were not level. The place was like virtually crumbling around us. But, we walk in there and we're like at this place and we're like, it's amazing. It's great. This is total potential. And we found ourselves buying it and literally moving into the motel about 3 months after that conversation and that first visit to the motel. And, to paint the picture, it was like the musty carpets and like the floral comforters on the bed. And the only art in the room was the sign that says no gutting fish in room. It had been a popular stay for fishermen and hunters for decades. And so here we are coming in there thinking this is going to be the next it spot for millennials visiting wine country.
I mean, to think back at that time, especially in Ontario, there was really nothing like it. So to have that vision, you were really on the cusp. I remember having those conversations when I first met you back. You had converted at the time the June Motel that motel into the June in the county, and I got it. It was just so inspiring to see. So, I love it. I love the story. I'm sure several bottles of wine that finally convinced you to make the plunge and actually acquire it. And so that's the interesting thing to me is, you don't have hotel experience. It was, forgive me, I think your first commercial real estate acquisition. So Sarah, how did you get that deal across the finish line? Like from a debt and equity perspective, I'm sure it's different today than how you did it then.
It's different. It's not that different. And I think in some ways there was a lot of luck on our side with that deal. So this is in Prince Edward County, which is now absolutely a hotspot. But I think in 2016, we were still kind of early out there, but really saw the potential. So the first motel that we purchased was purchased for, I believe, slightly under $1 million. So same as, the houses that our friends were looking at in Toronto. And so we had to figure out, again, with this wild business idea of converting a boutique motel would have been really hard to get a traditional lender on that. So we had to figure out, how do we cobble together money to acquire and renovate the place. So a few things that we did borrow money from family that served as the equity as part of that deal. And then, whereas again, a traditional lender might not have been interested, we were able to get a really high ratio of a vendor take-back mortgage on the property. It was a motel that had been in this family for 30 years, and they were eager to find a buyer. And so it, to this day, is something, every time we look at a property with Sylvia, it's one of the questions we always, she knows that we want to ask, because it's a way to get these deals done. And then our only other source of funds for this was, and we continue to work with them for every single project that we've taken on, are the community futures banks, which are existing across Canada. They have some federal backing to them, and they are interested in lending to small businesses that are going to make an impact in their communities. And so we were able to borrow $250,000, which was a renovation budget for that entire 16-room motel, lobby, landscaping, and operational funds, and our salaries. So that first project, the budget had to stretch really, really far. And a few things that meant is we took possession, we operated 2 days after we took possession as the Sportsman Motel. So April and I operated this dingy roadside motel for a summer because there wasn't the funds to do anything but have some money come in. And even though that might not have been our ideal scenario, served as an amazing education for us on how to actually operate a motel. And the other thing that meant was we weren't able to hire a general contractor or a contracting team. We did hire plumbers, we did hire electricians, and everything else that you see was April and I, or friends and family, laying flooring, wallpapering, painting, assembling furniture. So it was not something that we could continue to grow our business by doing things that way, but the memories from that first project will last forever.
Amazing. No, it's you're right. I think that there's common themes to that. Maybe it's not exactly how we'll call them conventional deals come together, but in a way it is. There's still very much groups that have limited partnership structures. So you're bringing different investors together. Maybe it's not family, but it's a similar scenario. Vendor takebacks, your point, Sarah, are definitely still very much a common theme. perhaps they're in a second position. They may not be your primary source of debt, but it's still very much an important piece to the capital stack and getting deals done. So you're right. I don't think it's all that different from maybe how some of the things that are getting pulled together today. So you've got your first one. You're operating it. We're looking for the second. So I am proud to say that I did represent you guys on the acquisition of your second motel in Sauble Beach in 2020, as well as the recent acquisition of your motel in Beaver Valley. And you guys are in the midst of a full renovation there, which is very exciting. We're all watching that intently on your Instagram stories. So now you've got 2 other hotels open and operating now. What are some of the most important lessons you've carried forward into this project in Beaver Valley from a renovation standpoint? Sarah, do you want to take that one on?
Sure. My thoughts on this were very renovation and budget focused, because I think something that we've learned is that you're always going to want more time for your renovation, and you're always going to want to have a bigger budget than what you might have to complete the renovation. So what we continue to take forward into these projects is, one, it's really learning how to prioritize the nice to haves versus the need to haves. And we have lots of discussion and lots of debate about what those things are. On this project, there was an idea of adding these private balconies. And in the end, it was something that we realized just couldn't fit into the budget right now. And one of the things that we also try to do is say, like, what are the things that we can maybe bring in at a later date as well if we can't manage to do it right away. And those private balconies being something that we could add in the future and have sort of planned ahead, so that still remains open to us. One of the other things that is hard to do but we're learning is how to balance the investment into the functional things and the utilities versus the things that are just aesthetic and fun. And that's always sort of a hard decision. Like, we know on this project, the property didn't have air conditioning, and kind of essential on some of those hot evenings to make sure we have that. So we've put a lot of the budget towards upgrading our electrical service. We also have added propane, so things are operating more efficiently. And we know these things will pay off, and we know these things are important. But sometimes you just, you want to have the private balconies, which is fun. And one of the other things we've learned, things always end up being more expensive. They never end up being less expensive than you expect, very, very rarely. So making sure we build in a pretty strong contingency into our budget to make sure that when things, you don't know what's going to come over budget or how over budget, but making sure you have that space. And then in terms of the actual project, a few things is that just how much better we're getting. We have a contractor, we have a designer, we have a project team, and how important really strong, clear communication amongst all of those groups is, and staying super well organized. And so our kind of philosophy on it is over communicate is always a good thing to do. It can't hurt to just make sure everyone's clear, everyone's on the same page.
Right. No, that it's like so important. One of the questions sort of I had around the renovation as well is, how do you prioritize items that are revenue generating? Like, is that important? I'm sure it is. And how do you balance that versus, the aesthetic? And I'm sure the aesthetic is, that all points to how you're going to drive ADR and the guest experience. So just wondering if you can shed some light on, like, do you have those conversations? Is that black and white? This is revenue generating? We think this is going to help make the hotel or motel more profitable, or we think it will over time, and we're gonna take a chance on that. We just think that aesthetically this is important. Is that a tricky question?
Go ahead, April.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a tough one, because I think we certainly at the June, we believe that like a well-designed place means that we can charge more. And so it definitely does have a financial impact to focus on a super beautiful, Instagram worthy space that's going to show really well. It's going to market really well. It's going to be desirable for people to visit. It's going to make some of those travel, top 100 lists, etc. And I think further to that, we sort of have this philosophy. We spend more money on like communal spaces and things like that than we do in the rooms, because those are really end up being like a bit of the showstoppers. But it is also thinking about the utility of the space and how we can create, maybe for example, in Beaver Valley, this is our first 4-season property. And so we've really had to think about, how do we drive more revenue in weekdays and shoulder seasons? How are we going to make the place feel really desirable to visit in January, February, March? And so it is investing in things like a beautiful stone fireplace, making sure that's like the feature of it, because we know that's going to help sell rooms in November to March, for example, and investing in a sauna because it adds to an experience that's going to make this a more desirable location in those colder months. And so, hopefully that answers your question. I think
it does.
Yeah.
It totally does. It is. It's a hybrid. And I think that's an important thing to point out, is that it's not always so cut and dry where it's like, yes, we need a food and beverage outlet because it's going to drive this amount of, revenue per, room sold and that sort of thing. It's for you. And I'm surmising here, but it seems like the way you market your assets and how you're appealing to your guests, that is half the battle. You're driving business by all of that. So no, it's really interesting. I mean, you guys are so good at marketing your motels. You've gained such a really strong social media following. I checked, and you're at nearly 300,000 followers on Instagram alone, which is fantastic. That's amazing. It's been fun following the progress that you guys are making on at Beaver Valley on Instagram. It's a great way of showcasing how and having people just buy into the June and feel emotionally invested in it, which is, I think, super brilliant. So my question here is, in an industry brimming with branded hotels, I mean, every market, that's the majority of what you're seeing. All segments, boutique, right up to full service and luxury hotels. Why do you think independent and boutique properties are able to stand up and compete against these well-established global brands? I mean, they're heavyweight marketing platforms. How do you think that these boutique and independent properties are still able to stand up against them in certain markets?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the June, when I look back on sort of our journey on social media, it was actually something that was a little bit more unexpected in the early days, but people really gravitated to the story that these two women who were friends bought this motel and turned it into the June. And, I think in the beginning, we sort of thought, we'd be sitting in the back and like no one would know who we are, but people resonated with that story. So we gradually over time sort of started to share more of us and more of how we bought the June, why we bought the June, and what being a motelier looks like. And I think people really, really connected with the personal story behind the brand. And, it's a proven fact. People connect with people more than they connect with brands on social media. And so I think when you're the big brand with multiple locations and multiple sort of messages to say on social media, it's a lot harder to like have that very personal story. And so the personal story has certainly, evolved over the course of our journey into even a Netflix show. And I think the Netflix show taught us even more about this industry and what our audience was connecting with. They not only wanted to hear our story and to connect with us as entrepreneurs, but they wanted to know how we designed the space, and they wanted to have design tips and styling tips. And so we were able to sort of, we were able to be more than just even a place to stay in our marketing, but really find new and interesting ways to connect with that audience, to be relevant to that audience in their day-to-day lives. And that's just helping us sort of stay top of mind in their feed. And, when they're thinking of going on a vacation, we're just, we're there in their feed to be top of mind when they're ready to make those booking decisions. And so, no second season of a Netflix show, but as you mentioned, we are filming these webisodes in Beaver Valley. And I think this is just another thing that we've realized is people want to see that transformation and people are connecting to that. So creating content that resonates. And so we've invested in hiring our own production company and telling our own story in real time and taking people along that journey from buying the motel to opening as the June.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've lifted the veil, right? You're giving people an inside peek into what it is day in, day out. And I think that is exciting. People love to feel like they've got like an inside scoop into something. And again, it goes back to feeling like you're personally invested in something and there's a personal connection. I will say that I mean, it's a boutique property. There's 13 rooms, but even in luxury assets, the thing that really draws people is that personal story, feeling like there's that emotional connection. So I do think that's a common theme and one of the huge pieces to success, whether you're boutique or, and small or large and luxury. So for those who are just tuning in, we're speaking with Sarah Sklash and April Brown with the June Motel. So thanks for joining us. I'd like to also just talk about your growth. So you've got 3 today. How do you see the June Motel brand growing beyond those 3? Do you guys have goals set for how many more Junes? Can we expect to see them in Ontario, maybe other parts of Canada, further abroad than that? I'm personally very interested to know what the plan is.
I think we'll be really transparent here. Is there's not like a hard and fast goal. And there was in the past. I remember April and I sitting down and doing lots of strategic planning. And this was like early on in operating 2 properties. And our goal was 1 property that we were going to add every year for 10 years. And after a couple tough years, COVID was happening. There was other things going on. I think we're kind of letting go of that really, really hard goal, and we're open to being a little more organic about what that growth looks like. And I think we're balancing a whole bunch of factors. So we like this idea of, okay, so we've gone from 2 to 3. Let's get 3. We're keeping our eyes out for number 4, but let's also make sure that we're feeling really confident and we're operating well with 3 before we add that 4th one on. Because it really we're still this like fairly small, nimble, but mighty team. And we're balancing that as well of having the team to support without growing too quickly and not actually having the revenue to support it. So we've gone a little ways around, but now we're just keep slowly adding. And we're also really, really particular about what property we're actually interested in. They're ones with charm. They're ones in great destinations. And so we also don't want to rush it and necessarily get the wrong property. So we're also open to being kind of patient while we wait for the right one, the right price, the right partners, all of those things to kind of come together. All that said, you'll see another one in Ontario, fairly sure. We think there's lots of opportunity. And so, yeah, always keeping our eyes out in Ontario. And then the East Coast is starting to call to us a little bit as well, not too far. Great things to see, some great retro motels. So, yeah, we're just, keeping our eyes open and open to whatever possibilities kind of come our way.
That's exciting. I'm excited for it, and it makes sense. I think that growth is always the trickiest because obviously, you'd like to see it expand. You'd like to see the brand grow and grow, but there's challenges with maybe growing too quickly, as you pointed out. So, April, what would you say is the biggest challenge, or what do you foresee to be the biggest challenge as you continue to grow? Is it the piece about raising equity and finding ways to actually acquire more and more hotels and renovate them? Or is it maintaining brand integrity? Like once you go from 3 to 5 or 8, how do you maintain the brand, the June Motel brand consistently? What would you
Yeah,
say
I
is the
think
trickiest?
certainly maintaining our brand integrity is like top of mind for us. And this is something we've already struggled with when we went from 1 to 2, when we go from 2 to 3. Sarah and I were both so hands-on in the business. So we have sort of miraculously finally figured out like the ideal structure for us. And that even took a few years figuring out what the right structure for growth looks like. But we have a really amazing central services team. And we're small, but we do a lot. And, we can keep adding motels to that team. So it's, somebody who handles reservations and somebody who handles systems. We've got great leaders physically leading each motel. And then there's Sarah and I just trying to, oversee it all, do the marketing, do the finances, the administrative tasks, as well as physically drive to each location and, make sure that everything is to our brand standard. And so that's a big job already. And, certainly it's daunting to think about as we add more, what does that job look like and how do we add more layers that will allow us to ensure that like the quality of the June is really never lost by adding more, by doing more. And so that's something that I certainly see us being challenged with, and we'll probably continue to be challenged with that probably for the entire course of the June, because we're in this because we really believe in the June and we really believe in providing an amazing experience to every single person who walks through that door. And we know how important and how valuable, your vacation dollars are. These are things that you look forward to all year. And sometimes, we're hosting people for, anniversaries, birthday parties, bachelorette parties, and like really significant milestone events. And those are really important and precious. So we don't take that lightly, I think. And then, I think the other big challenge I sort of foresee for us as we think about growth is how to stay focused on who the June is and what are those right opportunities for the June. And I think, we're in this phase where we're seeing opportunities sort of everywhere and having to keep evaluate, which ones are right for the June and which ones are not right for the June. And so that's tricky, and it kind of keeps making us ask ourselves, like, who is June? And really just maintaining some clarity on who we are as a brand and where we want to focus.
Yeah, it's so important. I can imagine it's a really hard question to answer, especially when opportunities are presented. And maybe it makes sense from a value proposition standpoint, but does it really, really fit where you're trying to grow and the guest profile and all that? So it makes complete sense. So your story is remarkable. People love following you. People love to hear how you got to where you are. And I'm seeing more and more groups that are new to the industry looking to acquire, either build or buy and reposition. But I think there's a lot of inspired people out there that want to jump into the space. So what advice would you give new investors considering hotels and motels as an investment strategy in their, let's say, their broader real estate portfolio? Sarah, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Yeah. 3 initial thoughts. I think keep in mind that you are buying it for what it can be, not what it currently is. And it's something that we need to keep in mind as we sort of look at what the value is. The next is really, if you're new to this, making sure that you're connecting with someone who has a lot of industry experience and vetting the assumptions that you are making as you do your feasibility analysis or business case. We connect with a lot of first-time buyers or considering it, and we often see what we think are really underestimated operational costs and staffing levels. So just being sure that you connect with someone and are based in reality on some of that. And yeah, I think especially if you plan to operate yourself, I think you have to love hospitality. It is not, it's not necessarily the easiest business. I think there's more turnkey ways to make money. But I think this is a really, really rewarding investment to make, where you get to see an amazing vision come to life. You get to see guests enjoy your space, but it is a lot of work.
Right. Well, those are great points. I'm sure people are jotting them down, hopefully, as they're listening to this. So thank you so much. You guys were just a wealth of wisdom. As you know, I'm rooting for you. I see tremendous things for the June. I can't wait to see what Beaver Valley ultimately looks like. I'm already picturing myself drinking a hot toddy or something by that fire and going and enjoying. So I can't wait for it to open. Best of luck for the remainder of this year and as you complete the reno. And thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
To learn more about the Hotel Buy and Beechwood Real Estate Advisors, please visit beechwoodadvisory.com. That's BEECHWOOD advisory.com.